Everyone, thank you very much. All right, Ed, he's going to be meeting with President Xi. The soybean industry is going to be a big topic. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, so far things look good. What would good need to look like in order to stabilize that industry?
So good would need to look like China agreeing to lift its ban on buying American soybean, which has come in retaliation to Trump's trade war on China, and looks like being in the mix in these negotiations that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has been having with his Chinese counterpart over the last couple of days. And that's why he says there's a framework, which is just a fancy word for truce in the making. And if indeed Bessent's right and the market sort of massive relief rally, well, massive big relief rally, it proves to be correct, then that's what Trump will do with Xi Jinping on Thursday, in exchange for him climbing down, it should be added, on this threat of 100% tariffs on China. So, I mean, there's a lot in the mix there. Frankly, I think one thing Congressman Alford did get right is nobody knows anything until Trump makes his mind up.
John Boyd Jr., you are a soybean farmer. Does that sound like that's what good will be for you?
Absolutely not. You know, this president sold America's farmers out. And, farmers called every day and they said that they feel like they've been betrayed by this president, $40 billion to Argentina, and then they start to sell soybeans to China. And then the president comes and invites them here to the United States and then cuts another deal undermining beef cattle farmers here at home. So he always says he's putting America's first, that he loves farmers, but this doesn't look American at all to America's farmers. And, he's off over in Asia. But what about opening up the government here at home and working with Democratic leaders and Republican leaders in the House and Senate and getting this government open? The president has to show some leadership here that he can cut a deal here at home before he runs abroad, And when he was running for office, he said that, someone who entertains a shutdown looks weak. That's what he said, a president that allows that on his watch is looking weak. So the president isn't looking strong heading out to cut a deal with someone when our own government here at home is closed, it's not open for business, and America's farmers are facing the highest bankruptcy rates in a very, very long time. Farm suicides are up, farm foreclosures are up, and we're still sitting there talking about a framework. Farmers need to hear something a whole lot more stronger language than that, and here at home.
So, John, tell me about your farm. How are you doing? You're a soybean farmer. Where is your crop gone?
Well, right now, I'm not harvesting. I had to cut my machines off. The grain elevators are full, which means they're not accepting any more new soybeans in on trucks. I don't have a grain storage capability, so I have to cut my combines off, people. That's how real this is. I've been farming for 42 years, and I never had calls from grain elevators saying that they were not taking soybeans today. Because the soybeans aren't moving here at home. So this is real. You're going to see a lot of farms on the auction blocks in the coming months. Right now, annual payments are due for America's farmers in October and November. And they also have to meet with their bankers to discuss next year's crop. And we don't have a market here at home.
Farmers, and Trump was right about this, and Bessent was right about this, about 90% of farmers voted for Donald Trump, and the implication is that China is trying to hurt Donald Trump's constituency, and that they see that and they don't want to give in to it. What would it take, Congressman Ryan, former congressman, for Democrats to win those voters back?
Well, I think we have to pay attention to them. I mean, part of the problem is Democrats stopped going to rural areas. They stopped really trying to advocate and fight for folks in rural areas and focused a little more on the urban areas and the suburban areas, maybe the ex-urban areas. But it's almost like Dems have thrown in the towel for rural Americans. And I think there's a great opportunity here for us to, as Democrats, to go into those communities and let them know that we care. Clearly, the underlying issue here, and I think John Boyd articulated it very, very well, is that President Trump has taken rural communities, rural voters for granted. He thinks he can do whatever he wants to do. He can have these fights, whether it's with China, with Canada, tariffs on, tariffs off, bailouts to Argentina, Argentina and Brazil selling their soybeans to China instead of American farmers. Clearly, he doesn't care, and nothing says I don't care. Like, I'm going to stick my finger in your eye. And as John said, like he did that last week with the cattlemen here in the United States, said basically the same thing. We're making things so great for you. And in fact, he's making it very, very hard. So Dems have to go into rural America, not just talking about broadband, for God's sake. That's the big, we're going to talk about broadband in rural America. You need to talk about lifting up farmers, building the middle class, rebuilding their downtowns, cleaning their rivers, like going all in on the small communities in those rural areas as well.
I think that's an interesting point. And John, I'm going to ask you another question. It's not as if these farmers were hit by tariffs for the first time during this administration. They were hit by tariffs during the first Trump administration. And yet they voted for him again.
Discount what you just heard from Scott Bessent. And it's not important what you or I think. It's important what Premier Xi and his team thinks about this. And they clearly know that we depend on China and China depends on us. So again, as I said in my first comments, a lot of this is really noise between two sets of negotiators who both have quite high levels of leverage. Look, when we depend on rare earths for so much production and China refines 90% of their rare earths, they know they have that leverage over us. Now, I think at the end of the day, both partners want to keep trading, but there's going to be a lot of noise between here and there.
Ashley, President Trump's legal justification for most of the tariffs this year were a fentanyl emergency and a trade deficit emergency. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy argues it's not about any of that. It's just a power grab. Here he was on CNN.
These tariffs really are just a political tool that the president uses to help himself, sometimes to enrich himself. You've seen companies openly admit that they're making investments in his cryptocurrency in an attempt to win favor for him to try to get better treatment on the tariffs. You saw Apple make $1 million contribution to his inauguration and then magically get an exemption from the tariffs. They're just about giving Trump additional powers to try to benefit himself politically and financially.
Behind the scenes, are Republicans worried that they've opened the door for a Democratic president to come in and make unilateral trade decisions just like this?
Well, it's a little different in the sense that while President Trump is not particularly ideological, you can go back really to the 80s, and there's sort of two and a half key issues that he has long held, views he's long held, and that have animated him. One is being very tough on immigration, and the other is on trade. So there was an understanding that President Trump was going to come in and push tariffs and push this trade agenda. And he has used it. I mean, to answer your question more broadly, one thing the Trump administration is doing is they're getting very, very creative with legal justifications, with rules of the bureaucracy, with pushing the boundaries. Basically, as someone put it to me, they will push the boundaries until they run up against something, and they haven't really run up against much beyond the courts. They were surprised at how easily Congress rolled over. So yes, you do hear that a little, that another president might come in and be so emboldened, and that could certainly be a Democrat. But in general, President Trump, Republican or Democrat, is the first president to really just run roughshod over sort of the institutions and the norms of a functioning democracy.
Asia trip, again, the trips Trump takes to Japan, to places like this where he's trying to make deals and whatnot. The whole point of this isn't really about the deal making, because like the actual deal making is made by like advisors from both countries. And, internet exists. People can come to the United States. They often do. Trump is using these trips as an excuse to escape the domestic scandals he's facing. Everything from his best buddy, Jeff, and the files that they won't release, the Epstein files, all of that, to the shutdown that he and his party are causing direct pain to millions of Americans who are going to start going hungry soon, in addition to if they get their way even, the Republicans taking healthcare away and taking affordable healthcare away from millions and millions and millions of people. The poor, of course, but even a lot of middle-class people, middle-income people are going to struggle. It's a looming disaster, and he doesn't want to be there for it. So he goes off to Europe, or in this case, he was Europe a couple weeks ago, but now he's off to Asia, across the biggest ocean in the world. And even there, the problems still persist because you have drama around the Canada trade deal, because Canada is at these meetings too. And also, the deals he's making are pissing off farmers here in the United States, here in North America. The deals he's making are angering them. Because on the one hand, deals he's doing with Canada, or the lack of deals he's doing with Canada, are hurting farmers. And the new deals he's making either screw farmers because the tariffs hurt farmers, or the deals being made help farmers from other countries, but not American farmers. And look, I'm not suggesting American farmers need to win every trade deal. When you make trade deals, parts of the economy win, parts of it lose. Sometimes the farmers losing, that just happens. But it's just very ironic that farmers, by and large, were very supportive of Trump, and the states where a lot of farmers were very supportive of Trump, and the parts of those states that are farming heavy were very, very, very supportive of Trump, and they knew this was coming, and they voted for him anyway. But they're angry. So I think on the one hand, it's like the urge is to say, I told you so, right? But then also it's like, well, you got to tap into this anger. Tap into this anger to remind people. Farmers were loyal to Trump. He said he loved farmers. And then he screwed them harder than he's screwing almost anybody else right now. And that's what's going to happen to everybody given enough time.